We're so excited about starting this week with great topics. Just can't wait to see our co-host, Jackie Clements. And for those who may be viewing us now on Facebook, I'm using my personal channel because you guys did not follow me over to the business channel, which is Dr. Willie Miles Children's Foundation. So I need you all to switch over to Facebook, switch over to our at Miles Children Facebook. We are on all social media. We are on all social media. So we're on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel. We are even on TikTok, Twitter. I mean, 5 or 6 of them. So you see, you can tell I'm not so fluid on these social media names, but we're there so you can find a place to look us up, and we'll be more than happy to provide you some of the best service and some of the best conversation and best topics. Right? Our goal is to make sure that we are meeting your needs. We're not coming on here just for social grandizement that says we're so wonderful and everybody wants to hear us, because of course you could be somewhere else. But we're glad that you're on with us tonight. And again, I mentioned that I am, we're going to wait till our co-host signs on. That's Jackie Clements. And I'm actually going to interview her tonight. I'm actually going to interview her tonight, and we're going to talk about education. What are some of the changes that COVID has forced upon us as a society? Some of the changes, and what has COVID forced upon us as a society? So it should be a very enlightening conversation. It always is for me. And I think she's signing on now.
Yes.
Hey, Jackie, how are you?
I'm well. Good afternoon. Good evening, Dr. Miles. How are you?
Hey, things are going wonderful here in Atlanta. I'm just happy to be back. We took an entire month off
We did.
as a hiatus, and I think we needed the rest. I know I needed the rest. I don't know about you,
Same. We
but
needed a little bit of a break, but excited to be back.
yeah, it should be an exciting year. I'm looking forward to a lot of great things happening. I'm also looking forward to you just continuing with us and doing the great work that you're doing.
Well, thank you.
I just have a few announcements to make. We are featuring this program on my personal Facebook page because we didn't get many people we had like 200 followers, but no one came onto our live stream. So I'm going to actually have the show on my personal, and hopefully folk will go to Miles Children Facebook and come on live with us. All right. So
Yes.
I'm just really happy that we're doing that. Also, I wanted to mention that if foster parents are coming on, we still might change our formula a bit because many of them are requesting certificates, and that takes a lot of time to get those. So we are going to make certificates available to foster parents who need this for foster parent training for a small fee. For a small fee, we're going to ask you to make your request once a month, not every week. And all you need to submit to us is a screenshot of the program. Send it to us, we'll verify it, and we'll get those training certificates out to you. Last year, we gave quite a few of them out, totaling almost about 200 hours of training throughout the United States. So we were just really happy to do that. Jackie, I think you also know, I just feel so awesome. Since our viewers last saw me, I celebrated a birthday.
Yes, you did.
And I'm glad you were on to celebrate with me. We did a Zoom birthday party.
Would not miss it.
and quite a few other people. And I'm happy to tell the audience, not ashamed, that I'm a happy 64-year-old. And I'm just looking forward to get to 65 and 66 and 78 and 90 and 125. Well, Jackie, that was promised to us, so I'm not too far off. You know, we can live 125 years if we do the right thing. So,
That's correct.
so much about me. Jackie, what's been happening in Fort Lauderdale, Florida? What's been happening down there, up there?
Well, I tell you, quite a few things are happening here, Dr. Miles. I'm sure many have heard our news. Our superintendent has been on national news constantly talking about the returning to school and how we're trying to protect our students and our teachers, our
Mhm.
community. Some of you may know, I can't remember if we announced it the last time, I did take a position as principal
Mhm.
of a private school that's been here since 1959. So we're very excited about that and the ability to help students and staff develop. So, you know, just trying to keep up with everything that's going on and move education forward. But quite a bit is going on in Broward County, Florida.
Yeah, really excited about not just in Broward County, some exciting things are happening. But as we get into the program tonight, we'll be talking about some things that are not so good. And I asked Jackie that tonight to come on because I don't want to see her as a co-host. I want to interview her. I want to interview her as an educator, as a principal. And we're not expecting her to talk about her school because she has to work there. And I'm sure nothing but great things are happening there. But Jackie,
Good.
you have been an outstanding educational advocate before you became a principal.
Right. Thank
So
you.
I'm really excited about, and again, you've been talking about this parent involvement and how, you know, it's an overused word and an underused activity for parents.
Right. Behavior. Yes.
Yeah. And so we're going to talk about, you know, the whole topic was about, you know, school days and how COVID has sort of like changed how we're operating.
COVID and technology, and quite frankly, they do go hand in hand.
Right.
Oh, there is a lot to talk about there, especially for our parents and for our communities.
So what I want to do is like slow it down a little bit. And, you know, what we're going to just have a chat.
Okay.
And I want you just to share, and I won't ask you any questions about where you work, because that's not really my focus. My
Right.
focus is a broader picture.
Yes, of course.
And so, Jackie, at this point, you know, when I hear about the looming crisis of kids and COVID, I think about education, because we're not talking about just crisis health-wise. That is a crisis.
Right.
We're talking about an educational crisis.
A genuine educational crisis, Dr. Miles. So, and you're correct, there are two sides to that. There is the health and there is the academic or the education piece. Both are honestly at major crisis points. When we talk about the academics, you have, let's just call it a full year of students in theory having learned virtually. But of course, there are a number of issues with quote unquote virtual learning. And what we know and what we're going to be experiencing across this country, I believe, are students who actually, you know, regressed
Mhm.
in their knowledge, in their skills. Just think about it, in their habits of getting up, going to school every day, responding. So there are a lot of things going on the academic piece. And then, of course, the technology itself and all of the questions raised about children learning in a 100% virtual environment.
Jackie, what I want to do, I want to break that up because that's like a 4-day conversation and
Right.
an education conference. But you know, let's be a little bit more graphic when we talk about educating our children. And I hope you understand where I'm coming from. Like what does, you know, you mentioned that there is a I'm going to say education loss, but in some communities and communities of color, there was education loss before COVID.
Mm, true. I mean, so before COVID, Dr. Miles, I think it is fair to say there were some educational shortages.
Mhm.
And you're correct. They have always been there. They've been a challenge, I think, for multiple reasons. One is our educators understanding our culture. Two is our educators having the freedom to respond to the learning needs of our communities. And then, of course, you have what COVID has done, which is now taken that loss, which again, as you pointed out, existed before, and kind of expanded it and moved us backwards. So there's one thing to not know something. It's another thing to have to relearn how to learn. And both of those things are what we are seeing in students, I think across the country, but most certainly, you know, in Broward County and other places. We have to get students back into the habit of the routine of learning. We have to, unfortunately, rebuild the desire and the reasons for learning, because a lot of the time at home has been on gaming, perhaps TV, but this generation doesn't really do TV. There's a lot of gaming. There's a lot of social media. So you're talking about...
If you don't mind, I want to break this up into two pieces.
Okay.
Tell what is it you think that educators have to do, and they were talking about what children have to do, and they were talking about what parents need to do. Is that okay?
Wonderful. So as educators, Dr. Miles, we have to assess where our students are. And that means we have to ignore the traditional quote unquote grade levels. You know, normally we go into a school year with grade level curriculums and grade level expectations. But those grade levels don't really mean much anymore. Those lines have been grayed, you know, by COVID and of course the situation that existed before. So we have to go in and have the freedom to assess where are the students academically, and then design a plan. I know many schools are kind of putting kids where they need to be academically, irrespective of their grade level.
Mm-hmm.
And I think overall that's something that our districts will need to do in order to get back to a place where we can move students forward. There's been a tremendous amount of loss of academic skills and knowledge.
Can I just put a pinpoint there? Because I just want to talk about that just a little bit. When you talk about, and Jackie, I want you to feel free to talk about, be very specific. For instance, you said our communities, well, since our audience is diverse, I really, and there's no embarrassment or shame. It's a fact, that you're going to find that communities of color are going to be hurt most or more. All children are going to be hurt by
affected, yes,
by these changes. And it seems like we're being forced into change, and some of us ain't ready to go. So now educators, for instance, Jackie, you said that they're gonna have to change how they assess students. And you mentioned how they're gonna have to like get rid of this grade stuff. Guess what? Other countries have already done that.
Absolutely.
And
other countries teach children based on their knowledge, not their age, not their prescribed expectations. And that's really what we should be doing. Wherever a child is, whatever knowledge they have, it's about moving them forward.
So Jackie, can we say then that educators need to do, like, let's give them 3 points. Educators must
be open-minded and start with undoing some of what many of us have learned are the traditional expectations based on age and grade. Mm-hmm. We have to undo that. Okay. So we must be open-minded. Then we must, as those in the classroom, our classroom instructors have to use very basic and very foundational strategies. Again, not these elaborate testing systems, but very foundational things to determine where is this child. And when I say basic, you want details. Do they know their phonics? Can they say all 26 letters of the alphabet? Can they pronounce the sounds? Can they run through their basic addition tables, their single digit addition tables? Do they know their multiplication tables, right? Can they pick up a book and read any of it fluently? If so, what level? You might have an 8th grader reading a kindergarten book fluently, but we have to start there and figure out where are these kids. And Dr. Miles, the reason I say that is because if we go back into the system post-COVID, using our generic forms of assessment, then the children will be lost. They will fall through the cracks, and the assessments won't mean anything.
Right. So Jackie, so let's just take this then. So for educators, you gave me 3 good points, and there are a whole lot more. But I think the biggest one was they got to become more flexible.
Yes.
more open-minded. And I think also in the education process, just as we expect our children to deal with this new paradigm, the educators and those who are leaders in education must be the same.
Yes, we have to embrace this new paradigm. Excellent phraseology in education. To go back to it with the same expectations and processes that we left it with is to do a huge disservice to any student we're educating, even those that are advanced.
Amazing. I mean, that's just amazing. I think it's a disservice. And so for educators, if they're all thinking that this is temporary and we should keep in mind the old way of doing things, because they're going back, what would you say to them?
I don't see a path back. It's certainly not over the next 5 years if you think about it. So we have been told by CDC and our medical profession that we are in this situation at least through 2023. Okay, so that means a new way of learning. And let's just say that means even if they're face-to-face, you know, a lot of people in face-to-face classrooms are still learning online. Do me
a favor, stick with educators now, because I'm going to take the children. But guess what? What you just said is also applicable to the teachers.
I'm referring to the teachers specifically, okay?
Yeah.
So if we're still teaching virtually, right, there's a lot of tactical being lost. And that tactical is part of their development. For example, a student who doesn't know how to hold a pencil. Now, sounds simple, sounds incredible that any such thing would exist, but it's a reality. They've been pushing buttons, okay? So anyone who thinks we're going back to that within the next 5 years, I feel is being unrealistic. And of course, in 5 years, we won't know what the quote unquote normal was. So we're in the process of developing what a new normal looks like, which means we're in a transition. And so we understand what transition means. There's exploration, there's discovery, there's development, but more than anything, as you pointed out before, Dr. Miles, we must let go of what's behind us.
Excellent, excellent. Excellent, excellent. And I'm really trying to keep myself composed because I have a little anger in me about some stuff. You know, and I think you know about that. I'll share with my audience. It's not just anger, but I'm emotional about it. Because we're still with teachers. They are our experts, even though they don't get paid like it. But they are the foundation of knowledge for our children.
For everyone, yes.
Yeah, so they're the foundation. And so, Jackie, what I hear you say for teachers, and I gotta move on because we're almost out of time, you know, that for teachers, they may have to go back to school to find out new ways.
I would encourage teachers to go back before every child had a laptop.
Yes.
Okay, let's remember that's, you know, that was a new development. That was a transition. Let's go back to before laptops were in place. And Dr. Miles, the reason that that's important, for instance, let's say a lot of kids got laptops, you know, this first round of COVID, the schools passed out laptops. A lot of those laptops have been rendered ineffective, not working, destroyed. And so along this path, there's very likely the chance that students will need to learn without technology.
Okay.
We think technology is such a given.
Yeah, and I'll share with you, and I'm one of those ones who think it's a given. But the point is, I think I'm hearing you saying that teachers are going to have to do more of cognition, more of teaching kids to think, versus having them to memorize something and depend upon a button. Now, I think the button's going to be critically important because the button ain't going nowhere.
Correct.
With this, so we talked about the changes that teachers need to make.
Right.
And not just teachers, but educational leaders, because teachers don't make the decisions.
Right. And the other things, well, the educational leaders part is crucial and vital. However, as a former classroom instructor, what that teacher does in that classroom with her students is what counts. And very often we've had to maintain what is required of us while
Right.
also looking at what's in front of us. Okay? And I'm suggesting that teachers need to look at what's in front of them and develop strategies to move them forward. It's almost going to have to be a personal mission, Dr. Miles. We have to remember our districts are struggling through this as much as we
Yes.
are. They
Almost
are
certainly.
trying to figure it out, but they are also dealing with staff outages in the hundreds, student
Well,
outages with COVID in the hundreds. So the
right.
districts can't do it all. Our classroom teachers will need to take a lead. Make sure you're making recommendations for your district and for your leadership. Don't be a passive player in this, because you see firsthand where the students are and what their needs are. So I urge my classroom co-workers to be vocal and be deliberate and intentional, because
Okay.
this is going to be on us.
I have this to say, and we're going to move to our next group of folk we're going to talk about, and that is, I can see teachers get beyond that classroom ratio because they're not in the classroom. I'm talking about putting our kids before talented teachers. Now, there are plenty of great teachers, and there are plenty of teachers who should not be teaching.
Right.
So we got to pull our excellence to the front and put more youngsters in front of them. I mean, that's one way to handle it. But I'm not a superintendent, nor am I part of educational leadership. But I'm just saying that we have to rethink this thing and think it seriously, and not think about, as you say, the grade levels and so forth. So let's talk about the role of parents in this transition, this new paradigm.
Well, that's a perfect segue, because those shortages that are happening in our schools and in our school districts, and by shortages, I just mean that the school districts aren't able to do everything. COVID has really brought out the role and the importance of parenting and education. Now, some people believe that this is a role that should have always been there, right? That there should always have been this type of ownership. And of course, you have those on both sides still. Those who say, hey, even if it's virtual, teaching him or her is your challenge. I'm over here trying to work. That is a mindset that will leave children uneducated. So while it is difficult, we know that it has happened before. We know that there are strategies. Parents will need to step up, create environments for learning, whether that child is face-to-face or virtual. And let me talk about that for a minute. So those students who are going back face-to-face this fall, many already have, okay? Those students have spent a year, okay, at home exclusively learning virtually. Educators already know that a lot of that virtual learning was not happening. Students could have logged on, were not focused, not paying attention. That mindset is still there when they return to the classroom. So if our parents are not playing a role and ensuring that that home environment reinforces the face-to-face, if the kids are just hopping in the car and picking up the electronics and going back to the games, the learning will not take place.
Okay, I'm going to be calm, all right? I am going to be calm. But see, we get this thing twisted. And the twist is, we ain't just talking about face-to-face with the teachers, it's face-to-face with the parents.
Absolutely.
It is a child's, it should be your face your child sees, not be scared but scared of your face. It should be.
That is where it will always start, Dr. Miles. And I think a lot of parents don't realize that if a child is not afraid of not doing homework, if a child is not afraid of to go to school and be off track, it's because they're not afraid of the face they see at home. Okay.
And we're not saying that children should be afraid of parents. I get tired of defending this. I go back to the old school. I know some things I know my mom would get a hold of me, and I wasn't gonna be doing it. And I know that he didn't do it. My daddy was gonna touch me, and I didn't even want him to even be touching me nowhere, because dad is a daddy's. Are you with me?
Absolutely.
So, and Jackie, I don't want to make mockery of this, because it really causes my soul to tremble. Is that if parents don't take control of this thing, we got another generation of kids who are subordinates and destitute.
And Dr. Miles, the emphasis there is on generation.
Yeah.
We're talking about a generation of students who, in theory, will graduate from high school without many basic skills, without having to problem solve,
They should
without,
be underclass.
yes, yes.
And see,
And what comes behind that as they become parents. We just have to think about this now. As they themselves become parents, when they came through an age of, let's just call it pseudo virtual learning, because they weren't really learning. You know, to be online doesn't mean you're learning. To turn in homework, to complete an assignment, because keep in mind, in the virtual world, anybody could be doing that assignment.
you know, Jackie, I think the answer is not educators. I think that you all are probably doing the best you can do with the situation you're in.
I would agree with that.
It is a parental, and guess what? I just accept no excuses. I just accept no excuses. I don't want to hear about you working 15 hours, because guess what? Then you got seven, I got four, I don't do math good, but you got seven more you can use. I mean,
Right.
but my point is, you know, versus you, and I'm not, you know, I ain't judging. This is just fact. Versus focusing on the Mercedes, focus on your child's mind.
What it requires, Dr. Miles, and again, you know, we've said this before, it seems that when we talk about parents engaging the learning process, let me change the word, owning the learning process for their children, people think we're asking them to go to college and get educational degrees. We're not. We're saying, understand your role, create some foundational systems in your home. One, conversations ongoing with your children about the role and importance of education. That alone would change the landscape. I find there are too many parents who drop their kids off at school and think the kids know why. Think the kids know what the priority is.
Let's remember, it is taking ownership of their child's education.
It is taking ownership of your child and their education, their health, and everything else. But in this case, education. And that's why I say it that way, Dr. Miles. To think that such a large part of your child's development, which is their education, is someone else's responsibility is just, you know, an amazing concept. But we have heard parents literally verbalize, oh, they're your problem from 7 to 3. I feed them.
So in other words, the mindset is somebody else is responsible for my child's liberation. Right. Somebody else is responsible for my child's future.
I was going to use the same term.
Someone else is responsible for my child's finances and well-being and mindset. But the people didn't have your children. The teacher
Keep in mind, this someone who might be exposed to your children for 10 months out of their lives, okay? Not one person is going alongside these children for their entire academic career or experience. So to suggest that that's on someone who's going to know your child for maybe 6 to 7 hours a day, for maybe 9 or 10 months out of their lives, but you completely turn it over and think that they're going to have the same concern and commitment and love and just, you know, of course teachers want the best. This is in no way a play on teachers, but again, teachers can only do so much. Every child in every school knows. It doesn't matter what that teacher says, because if my parents say I can do something else, I'm doing something else. So that to me is a conversation, Dr. Miles, that is a 4-day conference because we have to talk more about the role of parents in the educational process.
I don't want to leave it there. It's not just a 4-day conference. I'm talking about, you and I know that this ain't no game. It's not a game. It should not be taken lightly. It should not be overlooked. And I hope that parents are listening. Great. Many of them probably are not, because some of them hear this. But I'm telling you, I see this, Jackie, as our newspapers kind of always use the terminology, and our news sources. We are in a crisis.
And Dr. Miles, I want parents to think about this. We've already been in this, let's say, for 2 years. If we're easily going to be in it another 4, 5, you're looking at a 7-year span. So that means if your child was 7 when this started, they're going to be 14, right? If they were 10 when it started, they're going to be 17. You're talking about a huge chunk of their development. And if that window of time is spent not really being developed, because there are always going to be loopholes. If the parents are not plugging those loopholes, what are you left with? With a child who kind of actually didn't get a full education for
Right.
7 years.
But Jackie, it was interesting, and you know, I talked about this offline, and that is the homeschooling. Well, the homeschooling requires that kids get 4.5 hours of substance of education throughout the weekdays. But it's just not insane. I understand why they do it. To have a child to sit in front of that computer for 6 hours.
Again, something the school systems have to work through. So the idea when we went virtual, when we responded to COVID initially, was maintain the classroom.
Yeah. But COVID didn't say that, did it?
Exact same environment. Well,
Right.
it's the difference between sitting in a classroom and matriculating, moving around for 7 hours versus sitting in front of a computer for 7 hours. And it's just not happening. It's not realistic. Again, that needs to be revamped.
Yes.
If you think about it, the instructional window in a classroom is structured to be a 20-minute instruction and then practice and review. And so honestly, if we were looking at more 30-minute windows for reading, then go practice, 30-minute readings for math, then go practice, 30 minutes of instruction for science, then go practice, you would get a better response from our students.
Of course.
And a concept where you come to, reading in the morning, you come back at 1 o'clock for math, just a different schedule. But we have seen that sitting in front of a computer for 7 hours, not only is it devastating to the students, it is a wipeout to teachers.
Of course it is.
It's a wipeout. It's insane.
And so what we see, Jackie, happening is that, and really, I've got to say this, COVID is the impetus. It really is.
Yeah.
You can't send the kids back to school, and COVID going to say send them back home.
Exactly.
The kids who've gone to school under this open policy, in some states are kind of like, really, from my perspective, ridiculous about this.
Of course.
The school closed back down already. So the kids are going back and forth, trying to appease somebody politically. So the thought is, and not think about the children, and well, even Jackie, I say not think about the kids' health.
Right.
Because you're talking about.
It's amazing that anyone would, question that young people who are not of age to be vaccinated would just be openly exposed. I've never seen such. We don't expose them to the flu. Okay. We insist that they have all sort of vaccinations before they can even register at school. And yet we want to leave them open to the most deadly virus we have known in our lifetime. It's beyond anything logical, reasonable. It's indescribable.
I'm going to go out there. It really fits under the category of child abuse and neglect.
Absolutely.
Because anyone who fails to provide for their child's medical care
would be accused of neglect.
Medically neglectful.
Of course. And we want to send children back, no mask. I mean, it's almost like pretending, that the virus doesn't exist.
Right. So here we are now. We have dealt with what teachers should do, parents should do. Before I leave the parents, I want to give them this thing that I tell our parents.
Mm-hmm.
Stick with the schedule that you had when the child was in school. Get him up at the same time, her up at the same time. And I can hear them saying, I got to go to work, but you get them up anyway. And but do what you got to do. Take your breaks. Your lunch is prepared for you. At 2:30, school is out. Then you can have some fun before homework.
And I tell you what, Dr. Miles, there are some school systems that have navigated this successfully from the beginning. And what you were saying was one of their number one strategies. There are some school systems that I've heard of, some of our charter school systems, I won't call names at this point, but they insisted day one of virtual that those students be logged in on the computer, at least in a school shirt, visible for attendance. It was non-negotiable. It was day one. So that student knows learning continues. When you do none of that, don't even quote unquote require the child to log in because you don't know the circumstances, right? I want to stay there for a second. We didn't know the circumstances when they were coming face to face, but we still required them to come face to face.
Right.
It is against the law, to my understanding, in most places, for a child to not go to school. It's truancy. Yet somehow when it went virtual, many areas, many districts perhaps for the right reasons, but in my opinion, not really thinking it through, relaxed all attendance requirements.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have those who actually needed it. And in my opinion, it should have been the same as face-to-face. Documented doctor's note. Without that doctor's note submitted to us, again, we're using technology. It could have been submitted. Your child needs to be online.
Now, I'm gonna share with you part of that problem too. And we dealt with educational leadership and what they should do, and teachers. We're dealing with some things that parents should do. But there is an issue with the digital divide.
The digital divide.
That's an issue because many of the clients I service, guess what? They didn't even have internet service.
Exactly. So we're back to the challenge of a strictly virtual learning environment. And Dr. Miles, we have forgotten, okay? There are such things as workbooks. I mean, we act as if it's a dirty word, a workbook. Yeah, for that child who doesn't have access, for the communities, even for those who are face-to-face, there is some developmental benefit to holding, turning, touching, manipulatives, as we like to say. But we are completely ignoring that. So we have students who, if they don't have internet access, guess what? They're out of school. What's stopping us from sending a workbook to the house?
You know what I'm thinking, Jackie? I'm thinking that as we're talking about moving forward, right? Not returning backwards. But some things are not so bad backwards. I think also, not only do parents need to take ownership, but I also think the community needs to take ownership. For instance, there are plenty of things that we can do in our communities for kids who are in our community who may not have internet or who, may have a difficult assignment. The church has played a very big role historically. I'm talking about, let's have tutoring going on. Not the school that's 15,000 miles away trying to provide tutoring.
Right. Let's have spaces at the church with internet where the students can come and do their learning. Right. These are not new concepts. Let's get to know our neighbors, perhaps not to leave our children there, but maybe they have an internet that you can log into, or that student. You're right. This is a community effort, and we need to be concerned.
Or maybe Miss Jones is not working and she's homeschooling. Maybe I can convince her, let my little Johnny come to her.
Let's connect. Exactly.
And have 4 children that she's watching over, and we break her off. Give a little piece of money. My point is that we as a community
find a way.
Help. Now, you just said exactly the word. You got to find a way. You got to find a way to make sure that your children get the best educational experience possible. And then even if Miss Jones can help them, I don't care whether you're doing a McDonald's job. I don't care whether or not you're doing a whatever job. Check the child's homework. How was your day? Show me what you've done.
Mm-hmm. Tell me what you learned. Too often those children sit in school, learn nothing, focus very little, hop in the car again, and parents are good to go. Yep. They're not following up. So all of these things are very important, but they require ownership, Dr. Miles. And we talked about that as step number 1 for parents is ownership.
What I want to do, our time really is running on, but I want to give an opportunity for our those who are online with us to actually, you can chime in, text something if you like. But I'm Dr. Willie Miles. I am the president of Dr. Willie Miles Children Foundation, located here in Atlanta, Georgia. And Jackie is?
I am Jacqueline Clemens, educator and principal in Broward County, Florida.
Yeah. Jackie, I'm going a bit off course right now, but I want to give this number. It said in Florida, there were over 26,000 children who tested positive a couple of weeks ago. So those kids are not going to be, and Jackie, it's not just Florida. Georgia and Florida have more cases than anyone else in the country.
I know. I have conversations frequently with members of our school board. I know we have a number of teachers who are out ill. I know, and by number, I mean in the hundreds. Right. Just within our district, I know that there are hundreds of students out ill. Like I said, Dr. Miles, this is not a simple problem, and anybody in this continuum that is sitting back thinking that one person, one group has all the answers and they can just sit back and take the ride, you're in for, an awakening.
And Jackie,
we all need to play a role.
Our babies are dying from this stuff.
Literally.
I just
We
don't
went
get it.
through, I went through a CPR training recently. The professional shared with us that an 11-month-old and I think a 7-month-old at this particular time had passed just that past weekend.
Right.
It's there. It's real. I
It's
really can't believe any part of this would be a political football. It's real. It's life and death. You know, we always say, hey, if it's not life and death, right? But this is
right.
life and death. And so we have to jump in, and let's hope we do that and save our children.
All right. So we covered the administrators, parents. Now, this is a message for not say children. I'm talking about children being, anyone under age 18. Like, Jackie, what must they do?
Well, Dr. Miles, that is an excellent question, and it is another case of ownership. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Children have to be able to understand that this is a new dynamic. Ask parents for support. Ask, they've got to play an ownership role as well. We have to get our children out of this mindset of you just get to play all the time.
Yeah, and I think some other things.
I'm sorry. So these are very serious times. And again, conversations with our children and children stopping to take this seriously.
Yeah, I thought your internet was going out, but I want to share this also. There's some other things that families can do, and that means I'm going to say incorporate the hierarchy. The older kids help the younger ones.
Yes.
The older
Very
kids
good point.
help the younger ones.
And in some cases, the younger ones help the older ones.
Right. Some cases.
When they're the ones that are still excited about learning and sometimes, have had a better experience. But them helping each other is the point, both academically as well as maintaining homes for parents who are out.
But exactly, but also socially, because having an older brother or sister at home with me, they can do those tactile things that the teacher used to do. Are you with me? Or they become a teacher, and the key is that they're learning while they're teaching.
Yes, and what you're saying, Dr. Miles, is we need to redefine learning environments.
Yes.
We need to redefine learning structure, and we have to incorporate all of these things. Neighbors, siblings, learning units. There are people who have established learning pods, and like you said, you take 5 kids, and a different set of parents has them one day of a week.
Mm-hmm.
So the kids are learning, parents are able to work. We just have to be creative, understand that education is a priority. None of us want to look up 5 years from now and say, oh yeah, that's the generation of kids from 2020 to 2024 who didn't learn.
Or they didn't learn the right things.
Right. We don't expect them to know multiplication. We don't expect them to be able to read. We need to take control of this situation now and ensure that all of our children are learning effective and useful educational and academic information.
What I'm hearing you say then is that one, parents have to take ownership, but also there's a responsibility for your child. And there's a responsibility for this changing the dynamics of education versus going to a building. Yeah, I was about to say, like, we got confused about going to church, but I'm not even going there tonight. But going to a building to get educated when the education is right where you live.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't
Dr. Miles, the irony there is we have said almost in every show, education has always started at home. We must remember a time when we weren't allowed to go to the building anyway.
And didn't have any lights.
Didn't have any lights. And, I like to remind audiences as well. And of course, our conversations are not exclusively for people of color, but we mention that because, again, that's where need often is. The first person of color to attend, what they consider to be the best university, which is Harvard, was in the late 1800s. So they did not get taught in a traditional school. They were taught at home. And we just need to think about that. They were not taught with the latest books. They were certainly not taught with computers. So when we look at what education means, which we're redefining, education, first of all, Dr. Miles, needs to be more functional. We were really headed in a direction where education really meant your ability to pass a test. So now education has to be functional, and we need to know that home is an irreplaceable component to education.
Yeah, I want to say this also, and by no means are we advocating not using technology. Folk, I'm going to tell you something. You may as well jump in a river if you don't use it. I mean, it is here. It's not going anywhere. All of our stores are becoming automated. We're getting automated cars now. Everything is about automation. But the critical point here is let's not forget to teach our children to think.
Exactly. And Dr. Miles, let's remember, we built those computers.
Exactly.
So we had to have the minds as well as the tactical to create the computers. Now imagine a child who can only function on a computer. And this is what we're saying. Let us balance. Of course, they have to use technology. It is not going anywhere. But a child who cannot think absent of that technology is just as much as a problem. So we have to do both.
You know something, I'm going to say, I'm going to throw this out there, and I just don't have the, I guess everybody will say this also. I wish there was something I could do from the point of view that says, for these kids that are out of school on a Saturday morning, but they're tired of the Zoom already, they're tired of the computer, where they Zoom in. I think this is an awesome opportunity for us to get some real kinds of teaching of substance, for lack of better words, in our kids, particularly dealing with culture.
Yes. In other words, let's stop teaching academics and let's teach life.
Exactly.
You know, start with life and incorporate reading, math, science, finance.
They show our children what the future looks like, and either they're going to be prepared for it or they're not. And then let them know what's going to happen if they're not prepared for it. Right. It's very clear to me what's happening. If our children don't learn coding, they don't learn the functionality of a computer and the internet world.
Exactly.
I'm telling you,
if they're not being exposed to the STEAM and STEM elements.
Exactly.
Yes, they're going to be at a disadvantage. And again, that divide was already there. So it really means that our parents and those communities that were already at a disadvantage, now is the time to step up.
Exactly.
You know, this is a call. COVID has kind of come back to say, hey, you weren't really paying attention, but now you have to pay attention. You've got to educate yourself. And you want to know the good news, though, Dr. Miles?
Yes.
Sorry, one more point. You can find educational materials for your children everywhere. I mean, early learning on up, STEM things at Dollar Tree. So we're not talking about a lot of money. There are a lot of schools who are giving away books. I mean, the information is everywhere.
Okay, can I just say this right here? I'm just going to throw this out there. I'm just so tired of hearing people talking about money.
I hear you.
You know what the issue is?
Always the excuse.
No. All our kids, we see them, they all got iPhones.
Don't go there. Don't start with me, Dr. Miles.
You know, it's about...
Right, and someone will go, oh, well, that's just $35 a month. Well, did you spend $35 a month on anything else?
Oh, it's about, no, and well, first of all, it costs $1,200. It's about reframing our priorities. So, check it.
We're back in that area, Dr. Miles.
I serve them. I see them with iPhones. I see them.
Too. I
jewelry.
You know, I have an argument that I don't think a child under 6 needs a phone, let alone an iPhone. The overexposure is another detriment to some of our learning environments, Dr. Miles.
Let me share with you what happened with the kids who have the iPhones. They lose the iPhone, then the parents want to hurt them. And they say, you can't take care of nothing expensive. Well, I'm only 7 years old, so I don't understand all that stuff in the first place.
I don't know what expensive is.
But I'm just saying that we have to reframe our priorities. And we got to stop focusing on how the child looks and whether or not he fits in. And I want to give him everything other kids got. The priority should be, I want to make sure my child is educated from me so they can survive the future.
And the priority is have a conversation. I do this often. Does your child know why they're going to school? Do they know how you feel about their education? Not something you told them when they first started kindergarten or daycare. Is this an ongoing conversation? And it's really more of a show them than tell them. Your children know if you're engaged in their education or not. When you go a week without asking, when you don't ask about homework until you get a note from the teacher or they get a bad grade, you're telling your child every single day whether or not you value their education.
Exactly.
And whether or not they should. And that's a reality that parents need to step up to and own. It's more of a show than a tell.
I just think our parents have got to move from excuses to action. From excuses to action. I can't do should be changed to I can't afford not to do.
Exactly. And when we have those parents who feel like the district, the school is responsible, what I want them to think about is, okay, your child is now 18. The school, the district didn't do their job. Who are you going to go back to?
Well, I would tell the parents to put the same expectations on themselves that they expect of a school system.
Right. Well, I think, Dr. Miles, again, the whole issue is that is clearly not happening with a lot of parents. We as educators have plenty of parents. Like I said, that phrase became so common. Oh, I feed him at night. He's yours during the day. And too many people believe that. They believe that they can drop these children off and, make demands on what they're learning. Because, again, we're not understanding the connection between home and school. If home didn't make school important, school can't make school important.
Let me tell you, I used to tell parents when I ran child development centers, my responsibility as an educator is only to enhance what he's learned at home.
Exactly. And that needs to be said more and more. And Dr. Miles, I almost forgot about that background. You did run early learning centers for quite some time.
For 15 years.
Quite some time. Absolutely.
So I understand that dichotomy. I mean, first of all, loving ain't my child. 2, I can't love him like you can. 3, at the end of the day, he going home with you. 4, I ain't responsible for his future. So
wake up, parents. That's all we can say.
Okay.
These children are yours. You brought them into the world. You will spend more time with them than any educator they will ever have. Okay? No one has the same teacher for 12 years.
We have more access to everything
than ever.
But it appears that
we're regressing. Yes.
We're regressing.
We're moving back. And that is not defendable, undefendable. You just cannot defend why we're moving back at a time when we have more resources than we've ever had before.
Listen, Jackie, as you know, our time is running out. I really want to thank you for coming on. And each week I'm with you. I get more enlightened each week. And I think I want to kind of programming again, where I want to talk to you more about some things that parents can do. And I think, Jackie, maybe next week, what we'll do is, first of all, get some parent comments. What do y'all want to talk about? But I think we should do some things that parents can do to empower them to take care of take over the education of their children. We will tell them some things they can do. We'll give an example of community resources in every community.
And they are out there, Dr. Miles. That is a good point. There's so many resources to support parents.
They're underutilized.
They are underutilized.
And I don't care how small your house is or apartment, set up a learning environment that is conducive for the child to learn. When he goes in that corner, he knows it's school time.
Period. And we can talk and we can demonstrate that. So I think that would be a wonderful topic. Yeah. And, we'll do what we can to get as many parents on for that session as possible.
Hey, folks, tell somebody about us. We are on all social media, Jack. We have our own YouTube channel now where our listeners and viewers can actually go to at Miles Children on YouTube and actually see these videos and see our conversations. And And so we're talking about, we're one of the only platforms that are really dealing with what we call reality stuff. And we try not to sugarcoat it. We're not trying to be academia. What we're trying to do is human parents, professionals who've been in this business for a long time. And that's why it hurts so much when I start looking at the future of our children. Now, I'm going to end by saying this. We're not saying all kids are doing, there's some kids who are doing extremely well, but there are a heck of a lot of students who ain't doing well at all.
Right.
And they're not doing that well, Jackie, because of several things. Reform of school education, lack of parent accountability, and lack of personal accountability.
Yes, all stemming from the environment that we create for them as the adults in their lives.
Hey, listen, folks, Jackie, down in South Florida, I know y'all a hotbed down there, but hey, stay safe, y'all. Make sure your kids are, it's up to you, masked
wearing
up,
a mask.
and make sure you take care of yourself.
Yes.
Like I heard in our county, I gotta go, in one of our counties here, they began to order temporary morgues.
Wow, that's sobering.
Children are dying. All right. So, hey, listen, folks, great seeing y'all again. This is our kickoff of our new season. This is our first platform since last year, since August. We were off the entire month of August. So we're now back to business, folks. Every week, we'll be back with you in these social media. We send out enough announcements. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors. We love you. Jackie, I'll see you next week. Everybody be safe.
Have a good evening, Dr. Miles. We'll see you all next week.
All right, see ya.
Good night.